Ho, 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 and Merry Creepmas to all you naughty boos and ghouls out there in YouTube land. This is Jen. And you know what, guys? Another year is rapidly coming to an end, and the holidays are officially upon us. And holidays and horror fans are an interesting pairing. And the reason why is because while the holidays can be a very wondrous and magical time of the year, they can also be very stressful. You're dealing with people relatives that you might only have to deal with once a year. And by the time they leave, you realize why it's only once a year. You're trying to find that perfect gift. You're trying to pay for said perfect gift. I mean, there's just a lot of stress, financial and emotional and family. Family's its own fun little category, isn't it, folks? And a lot of people, no matter what kind of walk of life or what kind of genre of movies they're into, I think all people tend to turn to movies as a way to kind of get through the holiday season. And the majority of people, will turn to movies like It's a Wonderful Life, which is a beautiful film and can kind of give you hope and remind you of all the blessings you have in your life and how you might not think you mean much to people, but to other people you might mean a lot more than you realize you do. Or you might turn to more comedy classics like Home Alone or Christmas Vacation and laugh your holiday blues away. But for us horror fans, we need something a little stronger than emotional sentiment or laughter. We need something with a little bit more of a chop, if you get my meaning. Sometimes, when the kids are bickering and there's a couple days till Christmas and you're trying to wrap presents and perhaps you have a relative who has a birthday before Christmas and you're just like, ah! You know what? Sometimes you just need to sneak away from all the holiday funness and go watch a horror movie. And it gives our brains a serotonin. Like watching people slice and dice and hack our way through the holidays helps. It's a big time stress relievers, and it might keep us from committing holiday homicide with our own families. And Hollywood has given us just a plethora of holiday horror slashers and just holiday horrors in general. And some of those we watch every year, and some of those we forget as soon as we watch them. There's a ho-ho-hos and there's a ho-ho-ho, my God, kind of, movies coming out. And this year is no exception. Hollywood has decided to give us a Christmas holiday slasher, and it's a remake. And this is the second time this movie has been remade. The first time was in 2012. And while that movie wasn't bad, it had some cool kills, it didn't have too much with the movie it was remaking. So did Hollywood finally get Silent Night, Deadly Night right in 2025? Well, if you guys want to hear my thoughts, stick around or holiday slash around. Chop, 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 chop.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
So, Silent Night, Deadly Night. Before we can talk about 2025's A Silent Night, Deadly Night, we have to get in the Wayback Machine and go all the way back to 1984. The original Silent Night, Deadly Night took the world by storm, and not necessarily in a good way. It took horror fans by storm, but it took a lot of 80s Karens by storm, like, oh my God, we need to form groups. This movie made people angry because of the concept of this movie. And what is the concept of Silent Night, Deadly Night? Well, it's about unrepressed trauma, undealt with trauma, and a little boy who sees a guy dressed up as Santa Claus murdering his parents and trying to sexually assault his mother, which makes him go a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And so for parents and morally upright, God-fearing kind of people, went out in droves and campaigned hard against this movie because the very idea of a Santa Claus, Hollywood is turning Santa Claus into a killer. Think of the children. The children little Timmy doesn't need to see Santa hacking and slashing his way through the holidays. What kind of deranged and scum people are making these movies? Something must be done. Think of the children, people. But the funny thing about that is that, yeah, 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night got people in an uproar because we are featuring a guy dressed up as Santa Claus killing people, and they thought kids would think that that was the actual Santa Claus. In fact, a group of people actually made a protesting campaign, and they referred to themselves as Citizens Against Movie Madness, and they were on the warpath to get this movie taken out of theaters. Also, a fun fact for you guys is that this came out at the same time the original Nightmare on Elm Street came out, and for the first weekend it beat it at the box office by quite a lot. Now by the second week Elm Street was beating it, but for the first week Silent Night, Deadly Night was beating the original Nightmare on Elm Street's pants off. And but like I said, the moral majority just was not going to stand by, and this group, Citizens Against Movie Madness, you know, were calling stations. They were picketing the goddamn movie theaters, and they were carrying signs of, like, you know, Santa Claus doesn't kill. And then there was this really funny sign that I saw in a news footage that said, "Who's next, the Easter Bunny?" And I mean, I no disrespect to anybody with difference of opinions, but I just thought that, you know, well, someone carrying a sign like that, I just couldn't take it too seriously back then or now. It's just kind of funny. And but yeah, it caused quite an uproar. But the interesting thing about Silent Night, Deadly Night that I was saying is it wasn't the first movie to do the whole Killer Santa thing. It wasn't even the second movie to do the Killer Santa thing. It wasn't even the third movie to do the Killer Santa thing. For my research, and like I said, there's movies that people can shout out in the comments that I probably missed. But to my knowledge, the first one to do the whole Killer Santa thing was 1972's Tales from the Crypt, the British movie that came out. It's pretty much exactly like the one that HBO did back in the 80s. It was a guy dressed as a killer Santa Claus killing women. No one really made too much of a thing about that. And then back in 1980, there was not one, but two movies that were featuring Kris Kringle dressed up and hacking his way through the holidays. The first one was Christmas Evil, and it had kind of was somewhat of a similar poster to Silent Night, Deadly Night. It had a guy dressed up as Santa Claus with an axe, whereas Silent Night, Deadly Night, you saw a chimney, someone in a chimney, and a Santa Claus hand with an axe sticking out. But I was looking at the posters and I thought they're somewhat similar. They give the idea of what the movie's about. And then a lesser movie that a lot of you guys might have gone under your radar that also came out in 1989 was To All a Good Night, which was the directorial debut of David Hess. And longtime viewers of this channel know that I am a fan. We love David Hess on this channel. And of course, David Hess is known for House on the Left as well as House on the Edge of the Park, which are both phenomenal movies. They have their problems, sure, but David Hess plays, you know, such a scumbag. And in Last House on the Left, he plays a father that tells his own biological son to blow his fucking brains out. And he's really good at playing rapist. And the interesting thing about David Hess is he was a wonderful and warm and caring human being. Anybody who ever met him said he was one of the nicest human beings you'd ever meet. But when the camera was on, he could really channel this really gritty, dark, just disgusting rapist and murderer kind of a dude, and he did it brilliantly. And he did a movie called To All a Good Night, and it's not a perfect movie, but it's a fun holiday slasher that doesn't get thrown around enough, and you guys should definitely check it out. But before I rudely interrupted myself, suffices to say that is 3 examples long before 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night that did the whole Santa Claus trope. So why did parents get in such a hiffy over Silent Night, Deadly Night? Well, I think it was the marketing. What they did is when they would start showing the trailer for Silent Night, Deadly Night, it was during kind of family hour. One particular instance where they were showing the trailer fresh off the presses was during, I shit you not, Little House on the Prairie. I mean, you had Pa and Half Pint, and you know, I think they were flying a kite in that episode, and you just see this wee and la, and just everyone's laughing, and just wholesome family goodness at its peak. And then the next thing you know, you get this sleazy, exploitative commercial about a killer Santa Claus hacking up people left and right. It made, people go fucking cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And the other thing that really sparked controversy is once parents and the Citizens Against Movie Madness brigade really started going down to town, the press caught wind of it, and it became a big story. So the Citizens Against Movie Madness were really just going to town, and were just bound and determined to burn these horrid, depraved, morally bankrupt people who made this film, and they were gonna burn them at the fucking stake. And while the Citizens of Movie Madness, yes, I'm gonna throw that title in just as many times as I can, were ready to, draw blood, the writer of this movie, Michael Hickory, thought that it was actually kind of funny, and he agreed to any and all interviews. And I imagine in his little recesses of his brain, he knew that any publicity was better than no publicity. So he figured, any little bit of write-up in the press, whether it be good or bad, would get people talking. It's just human nature. I mean, my God, people, Phil Donahue, and for my younger viewers out there who goes, who the hell is Phil Donahue? He was basically the male equivalent of Oprah back in the 80s, and he had this daytime talk show, and he actually devoted a whole episode just about this movie, about 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night. And like I said, the writer Michael Hickory just found this to be terribly funny and thought it couldn't hurt the budget at the box office, and so he would agree to any interviews. And what his perspective is, he actually has a quote which I'll read to you guys, and he said, "The film could have sunk like a stone and never be heard from again, and then these people came, and suddenly it's leading the evening news with Dan Rather." Because you tell people that there's this awful, ugly film out there. Of course, curiosity is going to get the better of people, and it really helped with box office tickets. At least for a minute it did. It got people talking. And they weren't the only ones. Like this Citizens Against Movie Madness were not the only ones that were out for blood with this movie. Another two big names even today that you guys would know were the infamous Siskel and Ebert, who were never the biggest horror fans to begin with. They did a show devoting, when they did the review of Silent Night, Deadly Night, and the interesting thing about this is by the time they reviewed it for their show, it had already been pulled from movie theaters. So, and if they really thought that this was like something horrible and people shouldn't see, the best thing should have been done was just for them not to say anything. The writer believed that they were just feeding into the controversy and trying to look good in front of the cameras, and they might very well have been, who knows, although it's been very clear on record that Siskel and Ebert weren't fans. But I'll play a clip right here of what they had to say.
Coming up next at the movies, a film that dreams about a red Christmas. The controversial Santa Claus killer movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night. Actually, there have been two controversies about Silent Night, Deadly Night. Even before the film was released a couple of weeks ago, its TV ad campaign caused a furor with its brief depiction of an axe-carrying Santa Claus. The distributor of this film, TriStar Pictures, which is co-owned by Columbia Pictures, CBS, and Home Box Office, pulled the commercial out of release after a week of protests by parents led by a Milwaukee group. Of course, commercials like that usually die out after a week anyway, so thanks a lot, fellas. But there's no question in my mind that the showing of Santa with an axe on free TV and commercials is sick and sleazy and mean-spirited. So let's repeat the names of the people who did it. TriStar Pictures, co-owned by Columbia Pictures, CBS, and Home Box Office. Shame on you. Now, as for the film, I've got news for you. It's worse than the TV ads. Telling a typical mad slasher story about a boy who witnesses his father being shot and his mother being stabbed to death by a maniac in a Santa Claus suit. So now the traumatized kid grows up and is asked to work in a toy store as Santa one Christmas, and it freaks him out. He impales one naked girl on a set of antlers, spears another woman with a bow and arrow, and another with a knife, and yes, we even see Santa give one little girl a bloody knife as a gift and threaten another little girl with physical punishment as he sits on his lap. You might think that it would be funny, Roger, or it's played as quite sick in the film. So let me repeat the names of the writer and director and producers of this film. Michael Hickey wrote the film, Charles E. Sellier Jr. directed it, and Ira Richard Barmack produced it. You people have nothing to be proud of, even if you made a few bucks off of all the negative publicity. Your profits truly are blood money. And Silent Night, Deadly Night now has the distinction of joining I Spit on Your Grave as one of the two most contemptible films I've seen. And I don't mean to think it's campy. It really is quite awful.
I'm glad you mentioned those people's names, because quite frequently they think, gee, we'll make this exploitation film, we'll be able to buy our Mercedes and live in Bel Air, and nobody will ever know what we did. But I would like to hear them explaining to their children and their grandchildren that it's only a movie.
Yeah.
I think that would be a real interesting explanation.
I love that Roger Ebert is asking the writers and producers of this film, you know, they might be happy that they made a quick buck, but what are you going to tell your children and grandchildren what you did to Santa Claus, you fucking savages? Oh, well, Mr. Ebert, even though I know you're dead, I will answer that question for you. Had the writers or producers been my grandfather or father, I would have been coming into that elementary school with the VHS tape of Silent Night, Deadly Night, all proud as fuck and going, look what my dad or granddad did to Santa Claus. He made him awesome. He gave him an axe and he killed the naughty. I would have fucking loved it. Now, I wasn't the conventional child, but I don't think I was the only one. One thing that's interesting about going to these older time periods of horror history is to see where the pulse was of the time, and it's kind of sweet to see how sweet and innocent it was, and not to say that there isn't, you know, moral outrage over the kind of films we watch today, but it's just kind of a fun little time capsule to watch these clips and to hear these people, and you know, this very much think of the children, we must protect the children, very much the way the parents went after the heavy metal music, you know, around the same time, or the satanic panic. It's very interesting, and it's kind of a cool little history lesson going back in time. But I would have thought, to answer Mr. Ebert's question, I would have thought it was fucking cool. And again, it wasn't just uptight parents, nor Siskel and Ebert and other film critics who hated this film. Even some legendary actors got into the act. This is a fun fact that I'm sure all of you guys know, but I've never heard the quote until I was doing research. So let's talk about Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney was just morally outraged that they would do a film about a killer Santa Claus. And Mickey Rooney went on a whole tirade, and to part of the tirade is this quote that says, "How dare they? I'm all for the First Amendment. America." The America part was an ad. I just did it for comic effect. America, but don't give me a Santa Claus with a gun that's gonna kill someone. The scum who made this movie should be run out of town. And spoiler alert, kids, but you know what, as you guys know, the Silent Night, Deadly Night went on to have quite a franchise, and in the franchise number 5, The Toy Maker, guess who was starring in that particular vehicle? None other than Mr. Moral Outrage himself, Mickey Rooney, which has delighted horror fans ever since it happened. We have all had a good laugh at Mr. Rooney's turnaround. And the rumor around Hollywood is to say that, like, someone gave him the script but changed the title so he didn't know he was in a Silent Night, Deadly Night movie. And that's plausible, and maybe that is what happened, but I would think, you know, he still had to read the script, so even if it wasn't called Silent Night, Deadly Night, wouldn't his moral outrage because of what happens in The Toy Maker, other than the fact that it's just not a particularly good movie, fascinating movie, but not a particularly good movie, would that be why, wouldn't his sense of moral outrage kick in just for the contents of that film? My guess is the reason he took that isn't because he didn't know or did know that it was a Silent Night film. I think he was just, his career was not exactly at a great point. The studio wasn't, his phone wasn't ringing off the hook to get all these parts. And, moral outrage aside, you still have to pay your rent, you still have to eat. So I kind of think he had to just swallow a lot of humble pie and take the part because he needed the paycheck. Now, that is unconfirmed. That has just always been my own personal theory. But it is very, very funny that someone who was so outspoken against the first movie a few years down the road would be starring in the said franchise that said these people should be run out of town. I thought that was pretty fucking cool, and I know a lot of horror fans did as well. And also, I don't know why so many people were so up in arms against 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night, because, the idea, at least how this all came about, how it was incarnated, was from Harvard, of all places. Yeah, a student from Harvard named Paul Kami submitted a script to someone at TriStar, and they changed the script. Like, what Silent Night, Deadly Night is on celluloid wasn't exactly what his script was, but in his script he mentioned a killer Santa Claus, and the guys reading his script kind of, perked up at that and thought, we can do something with this. And so Paul Kami got a writer's credit, and I think in the movie itself it says that it's based off a book. There really was no book, and it was originally called A Sleigh Ride, but I think Silent Night, Deadly Night gives it a much more panache kind of a title. I actually prefer that. But going back to the history of Silent Night, Deadly Night, I will give it this. It's a pretty good movie for its time, but the problem with Silent Night, Deadly Night is while it has some very iconic scenes, and again, was pretty brutal as fuck for 1984. Like I said, we have a little kid witnessing the murder of his parents, the attempted sexual assault of his mother, being sent to an orphanage, and getting brutalized by the hands of this head nun, who thinks she's doing right, but is just a sadistic old crow, and and really does a number on already Billy's psyche. And we have the iconic scene with the antlers and Linnea Quigley, and we have an iconic scene involving an axe with somebody's head being chopped off. All of that is very cool, but amongst all these cool things that happen in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, the problem is there's a lot of dead places in this movie. It's very slow. I've heard people who missed out on it back in the 80s, horror fans who will give it a recent watch, and while they like some things about Silent Night, Deadly Night, they just find it a little too slow, a little too tedious. It's basically, what else you got? Like, that's really cool, but what else you got? And that's kind of where I fall with Silent Night, Deadly Night. Like, it's a movie that I really that I enjoy. There's parts of it I really enjoy, but it's not a movie I throw on that much around the holidays because I can't lie, and no disrespect, it's a little bit boring, which makes it the perfect movie to get a remake, because it has some really cool kills and some really great ideas, but it's not quite there yet. And I think those are always the perfect movies to get a remake, because you can be respectful to the original idea, but you can breathe new life and, dare I say, make it better. And I am happy to report that Silent Night, Deadly Night 2025 does exactly that. It pays homage to the originals, and there's some very cool nods, not only to the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, but it also has a very cool nod to the sequel, and we all know what that nod is to the sequel, and they don't do it in a ham-fisted or corny kind of way. It flows very organically, and they do some changes to it, but this is the kind of holiday slasher that I would put on year after year. It really knocked it out of the park. So, what the hell is a Silent Night, Deadly Night 2025 all about? Well, one thing I love about this film is it does pay homage and respect to the original idea, and we do some very cool nods in this movie, like not to say that this is a greatest hits, but everything that I think they thought the fans would want to see and updated, they do in this film, and they improve on, and it's really fucking cool. But they do keep the bones of the story. It's still the same, where Billy loses his parents to an axe-wielding crazed to Santa Claus. We also get a scene before that happens with a little bit kooky grandfather. But even with that, there's some changes. But one of the things I really like about this film is the movie doesn't lay its cards all out on the table. It kind of piecemeals everything that's happening, and the viewer is in the dark about, okay, well, why did this happen, or how come this is happening? And I really like that. We completely do erase the orphanage and nun aspect, and while I really enjoyed it in 1984's, I'm kind of glad we didn't add it to this one. What we do add to this new one is that Billy is not alone in the world. He does have a voice in his head, and it's the voice of the Santa Claus who murdered his parents. And it's not a mean, what the interesting thing about this voice that I really like is it's not a mean or evil kind of voice. It's, dare I say, almost a fatherly voice to Billy. Yes, he does tell Billy he has to kill every day in December. They have to kill someone, very much Advent calendar style. And if he doesn't, the consequences that Billy can either kill a bad person or some other person will die, and it could be a good person. So we're twisting the script where Billy in the original killed indiscriminately between good and bad. Like the people he thought he was killing were naughty. Not all of them were. In this one, it's very much more black and white, and his voice has the power to kind of see what people really are. And like I said, it is the voice of the dead Santa who killed his parents. But again, there's some cards that this movie isn't showing right up front or the beginning or the middle of the movie, and I really fucking admire that and enjoy it. And another big praise of this film is just Rowan Campbell and Ruby Modine are magic, because in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, Billy did sort of have a love interest, but named Pamela, but unfortunately he was just never really went anywhere. And this one, they take this and make it very much a love story, and Ruby Modine is his love interest. And one of the cool things about Ruby Modine's character is we come to find out fairly soon that Ruby Modine might be more batshit crazy than Rowan Campbell. You know, the guy that kills people every day in December until the end of December. Yeah, her character might be even more batshit crazy. She has some anger issues, and the movie doesn't go into too much detail, but she has problems controlling her anger. Getting back to the voice in Rowan Campbell's head, one of the things I really like is, again, it's very much a fatherly voice. Yes, they do have to kill people, but he teaches them things, and he gives them gives them advice that a father would give him. And when we see Ruby Modine, have little outbursts, for a lack of a better word, he says she's kind, and the voice in Rowan Campbell's head goes, she's kind of weird, and he says it in a very admiring kind of way. And yes, I could hear some people say that this voice kind of is too much on the same lines as something as Venom. It's a funny voice, it does little cute quips, it's very much there for comic relief as much as it is for the murder part of it. But I find that it works. One thing you're going to have to know about this movie is you're going to have to know your taste, and for some people this movie might be way too out of bounds and too batshit crazy. For me, it was just bat crazy enough and had enough heart for it to work. No one is more surprised how well this movie worked for Jen than Jen, because when I heard they were making a remake to Silent Night, Deadly Night, to say I was a little trepidatious would be an understatement, because the director of this film is Mike P. Nelson, and he's a great director. He has quite an eye, and I've heard him in interviews, and he seems like a hell of a nice guy. And he's not unfamiliar with taking, franchises and doing remakes to them. He did the remake of Wrong Turn. Unfortunately, I was not a fan of that particular movie. And to be fair, a lot of horror fans were, but for me, it just didn't work. And probably one of the reasons why is because of my own bias. Even though this is an unpopular opinion, I'm quite a huge fan of the original Wrong Turn. I know most people, it's the second one that's usually most people horror fans' favorites, but I've always had a really soft spot for that original Wrong Turn. And while the remake wasn't bad, it was just a little too much out of bounds if you really love the original, which I did. So there's strike one. He also directed, a little more recently, another kind of, I guess, reboot, reimagining of the Jason franchise with Sweet Revenge. And again, that little short that he did, it wasn't awful. Like, it was shot very well. It had some nice stylistic touches, but that, I said it in when me and Marty talked about that movie earlier this year, that is just basically a glorified hard cider commercial is all that is. And I wasn't too impressed with it. I did, however, enjoy his segment in VHS 85. And again, I'm not shitting on the guy. He seems like such a lovely guy, but two of his films have been kind of big misses for me, so I didn't know if it would work. And God, this is finally a film that I can say of his that really worked for me. And like I said, it isn't just about a killer Santa Claus murdering people. It is also, Ruby Modine has some skeletons in her closet, including an ex-cop who was abusive to her, and she's having to deal with him throughout the whole movie. On top of that, we have a child abduction going out throughout the whole town. And again, this is where it's different, and some people are going to be mad because, and this is a small spoiler, I'm not going to get into the whole crux of it. This is a small spoiler, is that Rowan Campbell only kills bad people. He doesn't kill. We come to find out toward the end of the movie that all the people Rowan Campbell killed are not good people. They all have skeletons in their closets, including a group of Nazis, which I is kind of a clue right there. There's this wonderful scene, and this is very much where I would see the Terrifier comparison, because the people that worked on Terrifier 2 and 3 also worked on this movie. And while this isn't exactly a con, but this is just a warning to my fellow gorehounds. The kills in this movie are fun and cool, but they're not near as graphic as anything and as in Terrifier 3. They're cool, but if you're looking for a really bloody, gory Christmas movie, look elsewhere. The kills are cool. There is probably my favorite kill in this movie is a kind of a recreation of the decapitation scene, only it's a Nazi's head that gets decapitated, and it's fucking glorious. And that is probably one of the biggest laughs I've had all year. As longtime viewers know, this has been a really rough and hard year for me. And the line where we discover that he is in this Nazi enclave, it's a Christmas party, and Rowan Campbell is only supposed to kill this one woman who is throwing the party, and he doesn't know that it's a Nazi party till he comes to the party, and he just kills every fucking Nazi at this party. And there's like 30 or 40 fucking Nazis at this party, and it's a bloodbath, and it's cool, and limbs will get hacked and heads will get chopped off, but it's nothing like Terrifier. So just a warning to my fellow gorehounds out there, but it's still fucking cool. And as I rudely interrupted myself, the funniest line that I've heard all year is when the woman throwing the party, our female Nazi, who is, and I don't think it's an accidental thing, who looks very much like a Christmas time Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, an older version of Elsa, but still a version of Elsa of She-Wolf of the SS at Christmas time, and she says, "Welcome to our third annual I'm Dreaming of a White Power Christmas Party." And that scene, the first time I watched that just fucking delighted me, and that is why this movie just fucking works, because it's little dollops of humor like that, they're sprinkled throughout the whole movie, that just makes you, just gives you that warm holiday feeling. Look, I'm the girl that, one of my favorite Christmas movies is Black Christmas, and it's the incest flesh cookies that just put a smile on my face. So it's no wonder that I would like a movie where a guy dressed up as a killer Santa Claus, it goes after some Nazi fucks at Christmas. It just warms the cold cockles of my heart, just my little dark black heart, to see Nazis getting dismembered at Christmas. What is there better, people? What is there better? But again, this movie is just so much fun, and it never takes itself too seriously. And like I said, there is also missing, on top of everything else, there's also missing kids going on in this town, and that is connected to both Rowan Campbell and to Ruby Modine. Now, Rowan Campbell's not kidnapping kids, but he does come up against the person that is, and we get a bit of a showdown. And like I said, there is some heavy supernatural elements in this film that I don't want to spoil, that will either work for you guys, or you guys are going to think it is totally stupid and over the top. And usually I'm one of those people that, you know, don't particularly like, you know, over the top or out of bounds movies, except when I do. I was thinking about this tonight. There's like a handful of movies that are, you know, batshit crazy that I love. Orphan 2, Sleepwalkers, even one of my favorites of all time, High Tension. All of those movies are batshit crazy as fuck, and I love all of those movies. And although Silent Night, Deadly Night isn't completely to that batshit crazy level, it isn't too far from those batshit crazy levels of those other movies. And it's just so much fun to have at Christmas. But again, the thing that also really warms my cold little dark heart is Rowan Campbell and Ruby Modine. They're just these two broken people who are fucked up. And there is this great scene where Rowan Campbell is kind of arguing with himself and his inner voice, literally the killer Santa Claus in his head. And the killer Santa Claus is talking very much like a dad and saying, look, if you tell her what you really are, she's gonna hate you. And we've all been in relationships where the time has come where we gotta tell our partner all of our ugly parts. We gotta show them all of our ugly parts and our warts. And this scene so eloquently shows what everyone has to go through in that, and the inner dialogue of, oh, if this person really knew about this or that or something I did, they're gonna fucking hate me and leave. And Rowan Campbell bites the bullet and tells Ruby Modine all of his dark, dirty secrets. And I mean, his are pretty dark, and his are, and you know, batshit crazy. And I love this scene right after he's done telling her that, you know, he has this imaginary Santa Claus that he thought was his friend in his head, and that his name is Charlie, and that he started killing when he was 17, and he has to kill every Christmas, every December. He has to kill 25. He has to kill people, or someone's going to get hurt. And he explains this, and it sounds fucking mad. And you know, a lot of women would probably be trying to get out of the car, but she's just sitting there, and she's like, "Why didn't you kill me?" And he's like, "Oh, you're a good person." And that's another thing, you know, how we hold ourselves up to in our heads. Ruby Modine, because she has, you know, she has this, you know, temper and can fly off the handle and can go a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs sometimes, thinks deep down inside where she lives that she's a bad person. And Rowan Campbell goes, no, you've done some bad things, but you're not a bad person. And they show and open up to each other, and it's a beautiful fucking love story. And they find out who is actually snatching these kids, and it comes to be a showdown between Ruby Modine and Rowan Campbell and the asshole kidnapping these kids. And it leads to a beautiful climax and a beautiful ending that, I'm not kidding, at the end had me in tears. And it was this line that Rowan Campbell and Ruby Modine say to each other a couple of times through the movie. And she goes, I want to go where you go, and he goes, I want to stay with you. And that is such an eloquent and beautiful line, and it really encompasses what the whole couple thing is. Basically, where the other person is your home. It doesn't matter the circumstances or how far or how close you are to one another. It's where that other person is where you want to be, and not much else matters. And it doesn't matter if they're a killer Santa Claus or, you know, a 9-to-5 lawyer. You want to be with the person you want to be, broken parts and all. And that is rather beautiful. Along with killing Nazis at Christmas. I mean, you guys can't ask for more. And you get some other really cool fucking kills along the way and some surprises. This movie was fucking phenomenal, and it's going to be in heavy rotation every year at Christmas. This is going to go with Terrifier 3 and Black Christmas 2006 as some of my favorite holiday horrors. I mean, this one just puts me in a great mood, and they kind of, again, we're dipping into spoilers, the ending really did have a tear in my eye, and the ending also kind of left it for a sequel, and I kind of hope we get a sequel. I would not be mad if we made a franchise out of this new one. I think it might be better than the previous all the other previous and the other Silent Night, Deadly Night, the other ones that came before this one, because a lot of them weren't particularly very good. Interesting ones, but not particularly good. I've known many a YouTuber who have tried to stream all of those movies, and usually by 3 or 4 they're like, I'm out. I can't do any more of these goddamn movies. But this is one that really reimagines a franchise, pays it the respect it deserves, but puts on a whole fresh coat of paint and manages to give you some holiday feels along the way. It's a beautiful movie, and I fucking loved every minute of it. It gave me a lot of holiday cheer. And without going into spoilers, I guess that is all I have to say about Silent Night, Deadly Night 2025. I will tell you guys, this will not be for everybody, but if you can just, you know, look at this movie in not such a logical way and just kind of, you know, this is a perfect holiday movie that you can just, you know, take your logic's hats off and just let the movie take you where you want. It's going to take you into some fun places, and if you're a romantic like me, might make your heart melt just a little bit. Make your heart grow 2 sizes too big, as that other famous Christmas story always says. So with all that out of the way, boos and ghouls, I would like to wish all of you, no matter what you celebrate, what you believe, if you celebrate or if you don't, I wish you the happiest of holidays. And the thing I wish for most for everybody is to be, whether it's family, blood, or chosen family, I hope you're with the people who matter most. I hope that love, light come into your holiday seasons, and you're with the people you love and who matter most. And wishing you guys the warmest of holidays. I love you guys. This isn't the it for the year, though. Like I said, we will be back, and Velvet will be joining me for my best and worst list. So those will be happening before the end of the year. We hope to see you there. And again, I wish you guys the warmest holidays, and always remember, no matter what time of year it is, to always keep watching and talking horror. It might keep your sanity, especially in these holly jolly times. So go watch a horror movie. I love you guys, and I'll see you a couple more times before the year ends. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy holidays. Bye.